Hello and welcome to Just Onside, to a very windy Blackburn. I'll explain more in a little while. How is it in Dubai? Certainly not as windy as it is here.
Yeah, pretty cool, pretty calm. Still very mild, which is very nice. We're in January, should start to heat up end of Feb, early March, but doing really well. Is it still frozen over? I imagine the snow's all disappeared now, right?
No, that disappeared weeks ago, my friend. It's a Storm Ewan. We were in France this morning, or I was in France this morning. Flew back. Was a little bit worried. I was thinking that the flights were going to be cancelled, but the flights did happen. But it was the worst turbulence I've ever experienced. It weren't ideal. It's 80, 90 miles an hour winds. I was doing a lot of praying. It's only in adversity. This is what happens, you see. You remember the Almighty when when things are not looking too good. But made it safely, thankfully. But it is wild, and we're catching the tail end. This is not where the epicenter is. I think it's in Scotland and Ireland. But I think we're experiencing about 50 mile an hour winds. I think in Scotland it's 80 miles an hour. So it's not ideal, but it is what it is. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess flights can be. I mean, obviously, it's going to be incredibly scary. Always feel vulnerable, don't you? It's somewhat flights. I mean, flights supposed to be it is one of the most safest forms of travel. They say, but you obviously just feel vulnerable because you're in the air. You often think the human mind thinks things could go wrong, and turbulence does give you that kind of feel, doesn't it? So, I mean, I've only had mild turbulence in some of the flights that we've had, but you seem to indicate that it was quite rough out there
It
for.
was. I mean, the pilot alluded to it at the start. He did say that look, it's there's strong winds. The landing may have to be aborted, he said, because if there's gusts, we're going to have to do a full swing. Uh, and I think people started panicking a little bit. There was a woman next to me; she was pulling her eyes out. Uh, it is what it is. It is what it is. I mean, I've got to be honest, I was quite relaxed about it. It is the
Well,
safest. It's.
I was gonna say it's because you've had a good innings, haven't you? Let's be honest.
I was just sort of thinking, look, it is what it is. Uh, but it would be nice if I at least saw Leeds back in the Premier League.
I was gonna say you probably had your boys rubbing their hands together as well, thinking two houses. I mean, it's looking good over here. Oh,
All right,
very good.
okay. So right, good to speak to you. It's been a couple of weeks. For various reasons, we've not been able to shoot any earlier, but we're back. Uh, but before we start, there's a mutual person that we both know, Billy. He's just had a big, massive operation, Bilal Ahmed. He is one of our avid sort of viewers. So, Billy, if you are watching, my friend, uh, get well soon. I've sort of had communications from you, so I know you've gone through the worst, but get well soon. Look forward to seeing you really, really soon. And I'm sure, Ois, you'll probably
Yeah,
echo those sentiments.
yeah, absolutely. Just a quick one. Yeah, for sure. I think he went for a scan today as well after post surgery. So yeah, hope he's doing well. He's always one to comment about the various different things we speak about often about Manchester United and what have you. But yeah, testing times. But I believe he's doing well. So yeah, always thinking of him for sure.
Yeah, yeah, he's doing well. I hope the next segment doesn't like uh, give him a relapse because we're going to talk about Amorim and Manchester United. Uh, he made a statement sort of week and a half ago, which sort of shocked some people because it was quite damning. I have read recent quotes that he's sort of backtracking. He said it was more of a reflection on him as a coach and his inability to try and get the best out of these players. But the first statement was quite damning, and I think there was a lot of truth in that comment as well. But what's your thoughts on the comment? What's your thoughts on what he said subsequently? And where do you think Man United are? Because there's been a number of false dawns. They keep having the odd good result. We think, right, they've turned a corner, but then they have a bad result, and we just sort of think it's business as usual at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, look, firstly on the comments, you're right. The comments in of itself was probably the soundbite of the season. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's what I felt in terms of the comment, just in terms of one single liner. Of course, he spoke about it at the time when he made those comments that you wanted a headline. Here you go, and I think the media, or the national media, pretty much lapped it up. You could not escape from it. Obviously, speaking about how this might be the worst Manchester United side in history. Now, you are right, Ayub. He has in recent days walked that back somewhat, talking about how this was perhaps more twofold. Perhaps one, that it was more of a reflection on him, the fact that he's come in after a previous coach has been sacked, and yet he's only got, I think, 2 wins in the league in 10 Premier League games. So he was kind of trying to shift the onus or the limelight, or let's say the scrutiny back on himself. Um, I mean, to be fair, he did speak about himself in the first set of comments. So I don't want to I don't want to be too harsh on him. Even in the first set of comments when he spoke about it, he said, "Look, you can't be firing a manager and then the new man comes in and he's only winning 2 games out of 10. That's not good enough." So to his credit, he wasn't just absolving himself even in the first set of comments. Overall, Ayub, I mean, he's coming for some stick, hasn't he? I mean, Jamie Carragher went in on him, talking about how, although he's not got much time for this Manchester United side, he did think that these comments were a bit of a joke and they went too far. Rio Ferdinand's alluded to it, although he's not wanted to go too deep in on the manager, but he's spoken about how he wouldn't have been too pleased with comments like this. I think, look, if we're going to take the comments seriously, my own opinion when I heard it was that ultimately, and this is just my own thoughts on this, I didn't see them as a huge deal from an impact perspective, and I'll tell you why. The number one risk with comments like these are that ultimately you will lose the dressing room. But I mentioned right from the offer, you, but I want to stay consistent. Uh, Ruben Amorim will be here a lot longer, I believe, than many of these players will be. Which means that ultimately he's thinking, I've got carte blanche, I've got free reign ultimately to do as I wish. I also think he is, by his own words and admission, a bit young and a bit naive, and he talks a lot. And he said that, if you remember, you from the very first interview, that he's so open when it came to that interview with Gary Neville that he'll often find himself perhaps being too honest. There are times when managers have to shield what they really think, let's say, keep it pretty vanilla, like a lot of managers do. But I do think there is time, if you, I don't know if you agree, but I think so, in terms of football and sports in general, for sound bites to be of an honest nature. You don't want to just keep hearing the same old vanilla stuff, whether it's coaches, players, that it's only the next game that matters and all that trope. I mean, that's not necessarily what you want to hear ultimately what a manager really thinks. And if that's what he thinks, so be it. I'm not going to be against somebody being open and honest with his views. Look, I don't have too much of an issue with him because ultimately, say he loses some of these players in terms of his comments, well, I would argue that some of these players then don't have the backbone or the character to be part of a Manchester United squad or to be kind of at the forefront of a revival, which is what he wants to oversee there, Yub. So he's gonna wanna take his time. I mentioned right from the off, I don't judge him this season. His remit is to not get relegated. Next season, I won't be judging him again, so I'm not gonna go too high when he overcomes Arsenal on a penalty shootout or comes to Anfield and draws a game. I mean, let's not forget both games, although they would have been expected to lose both those games, especially the Anfield one, Europe. They're not games they won. It's not as though they went to Anfield and won, or they went to the Emirates and won. They won on penalties. I mean, fine, it's a draw, but it's a cup game. And yes, it is the best they could have hoped for in terms of going down to 10 men, to which I give them credit. But it's not one of those results. And I always speak about how one result isn't what ultimately is going to define. You want some consistency of performance. You want some consistency of kind of a way of playing. I don't think he can forge that anyway. So what's the point in judging? Came Southampton, they overcame that. That would have been a nadir moment in terms of. I mean, that would have been really bad given Southampton in terms of where they are. If they had come to Old Trafford and won, and it was the young boy wonder who saved them once more. So yeah, look, it wasn't a surprise to me that they lost to Brighton. I watched the whole game. Shocking errors, really. I mean, the Onana mistake. Brighton had a goal disallowed, which was questionable, I would argue. So yeah, Brighton fully deserved to win the game. They often beat Man United, especially at Old Trafford as well. So This is what I expected. He's not a magician. It's going to take him time. It's going to take him multiple windows. My worry for him, Ayub, if I may say, is that he's going to have to hit on some of these transfers at a rate and a clip that you've not seen in many a season. I mean, most managers get the odd one wrong, and he's not going to get a bucket load to spend. They're in a bit of bother, Yub, when it comes to
Mm.
PSR. You've seen the noises around Garnacho, Mainu, and Rashford. Rashford, you'd say fair enough. I mean, you've been one of his most vocal critics. I think the other two, however, are the type of players that you'd hope. And Mainu's had a bit of a come down season, but I'm going to cut him some slack. He's a young boy who's played a lot of meaningful football at a young age. But Mainu and Garnacho, if you're going to lose any of those caliber of players when they're young, you can build a team that's this. I mean, those two are talented, very talented young players. That's a huge worry if you're asking me, because those are the kind of players you should be building around your future kind of squad around. So if they are in a bit of bother when it comes to PSR, that could really set him back in terms of the chances of recovery. So comments, not a huge issue. Again, if they were, let's say, in the hunt for a title or in the hunt for European football, I'd say fair enough because you've got clear aims and objectives. But the objective this season, for me, is don't get relegated. I don't see them getting relegated. So from his perspective, I don't really see what damage he's done. That's my view.
Well, under normal circumstances, uh, I want I I don't agree with washing your dirty linen in public under normal circumstances. I don't think these are normal circumstances. I think where Man United are at this moment, I think it needs a few home truths. I think some players need to know exactly that they've not pulled their weight, uh, and they need to be called out. So I think in this situation or this circumstance, I absolutely agree, and he should have doubled down. I think he should have said that no, no, I don't take it back. I a manager has a great deal of responsibility, but occasionally, if the players are not performing, and it's not recently, this has been going on for a long, long time. I think the attitudes stink for a number of players, and 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 you sort of talked about it briefly there that maybe it's one way of identifying, right? You said backbone. Maybe this is a way of identifying, right? Who's up for the fight? Who's who's been upset at what's been said, but wants to prove the coach wrong. So these are quite sort of important moments. I don't think Amarin had that intention. I think he is an honest guy, and I think he's just said it, and then he's looked back on it and thought, maybe this is not the ideal thing to say. But I think he should have stuck to his guns and said, look, this is a club which is in a terminal situation at this moment in time. Uh, it's difficult to rectify, and maybe sometimes telling the truth is one approach. People need to be open. People need to be honest. I don't know what his blueprint is. This is the problem. What I see with Amorim at this moment in time is he trying to get results or is he looking at long term? I would almost want him, if I was the owner of Manchester United, I'd say, look, write this season off. I want you to prepare all for the next season. So identify who you want to get rid of. Bring in young players. Doesn't matter if we're losing games, we're not going to get relegated. I'm pretty confident, or at least that should be the conversation, and they won't get relegated.
Yep.
I don't care how poorly they're playing. There are three worse sides, at least, in the Premier League than Man United, and it will be borne out at the end of the season. They will not finish in the bottom three. So maybe start preparing for the next season now. He almost seems to be playing to get results, and I almost sort of think it's pointless. Don't do that. Try and identify who you want, who's going to be players that you want to keep for next season. If you're not going to keep players, freeze them out. Don't even get them in the squad. And that's what I would want him to do. If he's serious about taking this club, I'm not even going to sort of say it to the next level because I think they need to pick themselves up from a dire situation. He needs to start planning and he needs to start making decisions for next season. As I said, he looks to be playing uh, to get results, and which is fair. I mean, that's obviously what he should be doing. But I think he should always be, in my opinion, he should be thinking about next season, uh, and that should be the top of his priorities. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I mean, look, you say he's playing for results. I know what you mean. He talks about it quite a bit in terms of um in terms of needing results ultimately as that is the indicator ultimately whether he's doing a good job or not. And I'm not sure that is the case because ultimately, yes, football is about winning games. No issues with that whatsoever at the highest level, at the competitive level. But again, he's pretty much got a free rein. I don't see what an eighth place finish does for him this season. It's not as though we're going to rush to judgment to suggest that actually Manchester United are on the up. Where we'll perhaps come to that conclusion is when we see a relatively settled team, a certain way of playing that's forging more good performances than not. And I think that would be the first indication and the first bar that we'd speak of, where we say, by and large, over the course of 10, 15 games, I know what I'm getting from Man United. They may not quite be getting the results in some of the games where you need, that's at the maybe the next level of progression, right? But first, it's just to establish a certain playing personnel, get that team relatively settled. They're far from that at the moment. When you go from 1 to 11, at least, Ayub, in terms of their best 11, you'd say there's question marks at least, I would say, five positions, at least, I would say. Centre forward, definitely a couple of options in central midfield. Uh, the fullback positions, the goalkeeper, probably one more dominant centre back for sure. I mean, there's multiple positions where they need to address. They're not going to be able to address that in one window. I don't think it's fair to suggest they can. Again, they're in some financial trouble, it would appear. For me, there's two dangers here. I'm going to reiterate. The main Garnacho thing for me has shocked me a little bit, to be honest. That is nothing but I don't think that's got anything to do with any off the field stuff, especially not in the case of Manu, because there's no noise
Hmm.
whatsoever with regards to that. There has been a little bit with Garnacho. Um, However, this boy is incredibly talented, and I don't see how you can make a judgment that he's better served being elsewhere than at your football club. I think this is one that if Garnacho ends up, and I think most Manchester United fans feel this way, you're the ones that I've spoken to, and just general sentiment, and your eyes don't lie, there's a footballer there.
Yeah.
Now, if it, when it's a young footballer, you try and nurture that. You can't. I mean, it's normally it's the young players that get actually the longest leash because you're thinking there's still plenty of time to turn them around. That's the first thing. Secondly, they're very coachable. A lot of bad habits haven't necessarily forged just yet. And thirdly, you try and keep them on just for the whole sake of resale value. So you get the best out of them, maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 years, and then there's still value in order to generate a profit. Now, all of Garnacho's proceeds will go to helping them in the PSR kind of state or status, I should say, which is a worry because if that's the case, then you're not necessarily getting rid of a player because it's warranted, but it's because your book suggests that you're going to have to go down this route. That's a big concern for me because then, for me, if I was Ruben Amorim, alarm bells must be ringing because what he needs to do with this squad in terms of shaping them, turning them around in terms of player personnel, I would argue it's the biggest job in the Premier League right now, especially in terms of their lofty ambitions. So that's a huge turnaround he's going to be tasked with, and it seems perhaps with one arm tied behind his back. The second one, the concern that I have for him, you, but I don't know if you agree, is where, and I feel for him in this regard because again, I'm a fan of this type of approach, is where the players start to over time consider him to be a bit of a caricature where he's often being too honest and he's often giving too many sound bites to the media. And you know how the media are in terms of post-match interviews, post-match or press conferences. If they feel as though the manager's gonna give him a good sound bite, they'll goad him into it.
Hmm.
They'll open up the floor to invite him to, let's say, fall into that pit, and he's got to just be mindful and guarded that at the appropriate time he is going to have to bite his lip at the appropriate time, which is when they start to take some steps forward. So I'm okay with him being honest. Honestly, I don't. Nobody's died. It's fine. He's being honest. He's admitted that perhaps he was a bit naive, and that's okay. We all make mistakes. He's young. We forget he's very young as a manager. But I just worry that over time, some players, because the squad's a big place. I mean, it's a lot of players, and you're disappointing a lot of them at the same time. Let's be honest he becomes a bit of a caricature where the players start to, tune him out to some extent. The good thing for Amorim right now is the whole club, maybe some of the player personnel, and perhaps not, but the fans are on his side. They want him to succeed. They want him to do well. And if it's a choice between the players or the manager right now, the manager's gonna get the approval all day, every day. So for now, he's good because when you have the fans on side, the squad normally tends to, play ball, let's say. The worry is if over time fans start to, I mean, you started hearing some murmurings with Arteta with some of Arsenal fans. You saw,
Hmm.
again, for me, fully unjustified, some fans. But it just goes to show Arteta's being relatively successful. So, in that regard, I just think over time he's just got to be mindful of what that status is. Again, as long as he's got the fan support, he'll be fine. But he's probably just going to have to rein himself in and keep some of the responses over time vanilla or focus more on the tactical side of things if he wants to be oversharing, let's say. So let's see.
I mean, the only thing is, I mean, he said something which most fans, most Man United fans would agree with. So he's not saying anything controversial in respects of what the fans are thinking. Maybe I suppose there is a certain football etiquette where
Yeah.
you keep everything in house. But as I said, that these are exceptional times at Manchester United, and maybe just whatever the rule book is of football etiquette needs to be thrown out. But what I would want him to do uh, is to at least identify what his plans are. I think this is really, if I was a fan of Manchester United Football Club, I'd like to know what his blueprint is. If he said it, it's certainly something that's not been publicized. But it, it it requires wholesale surgery. This football club, it needs to offload a number of players. And at the moment, I still don't have an idea as to who he's identified going forward. Who obviously with the Rashford, that seems quite obvious, and it's long overdue. I mean, obviously you said it earlier that I've been a critic of Rashford, and I wish Manchester United had seen what I saw uh, when I saw it, because it only takes one or two players to stink the joint out. And Rashford's quite albeit he's still, I mean, I suppose he's still quite a young man, but he's been there a long, long time, and he's a high-profile character who has a great deal of influence, I would sort of say, certainly around the club. Uh, and he sort of embodies what's gone wrong at Manchester United Football Club for me. And in a sense, I hold him hugely accountable and responsible for the mess that the club is in. He's the sort of player that really should have taken ownership and said, right, I'm going to be a leader. He's Manchester United through and through. He's been there since he was a young man. So if anything, he should be more uh, invested in making sure that this club goes forward and almost sort of being, I suppose, a true leader. Gary Neville, all of the, I mean, the class of '92 were classic. They were uh, Manchester United through and through. I mean, Gary Neville still. I mean, he's still so passionate about Manchester United Football Club. And this is really what I would have expected from Rashford, but he's just taken his eye off the ball. There are other things of much more interest to him than Manchester United Football Club. So Amorim needs to almost now. I mean, if he's going to be honest, if he's going to be transparent, he needs to come out and sort of say, right, this is a club which needs to get rid of a lot of players. What I'm doing now is identifying who's going to stay, but more importantly, who's going to go. Uh, so at least the fans are aware that right, there is a blueprint. This guy is planning for next year, or at least planning for the future. That's what I'm not hearing. That's my only concern at the moment with Amory. He probably is doing it, but at the moment, I would rather he did that uh, because this is a great club. I mean, whether you like Manchester United or not, this is an institution in English football, uh, and football is much healthier. Even though if you're a Liverpool fan, you probably disagree. English football is a lot healthier with a strong Manchester United, and I just sort of think this uh, Amorim. He speaks well. He's a bright man, and I think he's got a great future. But he needs to now almost put his mark down at right. This is my club. This is my Manchester United, and this is my plans.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't disagree with you. I mean, you argue that the league's better if it's a strong Manchester United. I'm not sure all the fans would agree, although you did have your tongue firmly in cheek. I mean, look, they had 2 decades of excellence, so if they have 2 decades in the wilderness, I mean, so be it. I mean, it is what it is. They had a good run there. I mean, look, I'm in agreement with you. I think, look, he has to some extent outlined what he sees as his preferred United team in terms of how that dynamic would look like. Lots of running, lots of pressing, certain shapes and stuff. He's spoken about. He knows we know he likes the 3-4-3 formation, but not in your conventional sense with more inverted wingers rather than conventional wingers, which is one of the reasons being mooted about why Garnacho is leaving, or would appear to be leaving. I mean, the fact that he could get snapped up by Chelsea will be galling for Manchester United fans because Chelsea are quite well stocked up when it comes
Mm,
to young talent, and here comes uh, another top talent coming into the club. I mean, I really do wonder if they lose a Garnacho because I think he's got the capabilities of becoming a top Premier League footballer.
I agree. I agree.
I really do because you just see certain things in young footballers and you think if that's channeled in a certain way over time, they could become, I'm not saying world beaters, but very, very good professional footballers at the highest level. So let's see. We wait and see. I mean, look, Amorim's got a tough job. I keep saying he's about the 13th in the league. They deserve to be 13th. They've won less than a third of their Premier League games, which is shocking. Just that seven Premier League games. Um, I mean, Arne Slot, we didn't speak about it at the time, but Arne Slot was saying before the game at Anfield that their position belies, in a sense, the team and the squad and what have you. And I thought, oh, Arne's having a right. He's just, I mean, I could see his nose growing by the comment, but no, I mean, look, they are where they are. The table does not lie. They deserve to be where they are. They're a bang average team. One performance at the Emirates, so Anfield isn't going to change my mind. Do they have the ability to, if they are a massively inferior team, let's say when they went to Anfield and dig in, and it was a good performance, we said it at the
Mm,
time.
yeah, yeah.
But there's one thing being reactionary and using the other team's potency to dig in and sit in and what have you, as opposed to then going out and making the running yourself. We've seen that. That's a very difficult transition for some teams, and Man United are finding that out the hard way because you leave yourself a more open at the back. So look, Amorim's got big issues, big challenges. He'll be given this season, next season for sure. I'd be shocked if at any time over the next 12 to 18 months there was any question about him not being the man for Manchester United. That would be a real shock for me. But yeah, a long, long way to go. I've not seen anything to suggest that he is going to be successful, other than the fact that I think he's a very good coach. So I do hold out hope for him. But yeah, it's a long, long way to go, and they may not have even hit rock bottom yet.
Right. From one manager who's struggling or finding it hard to another manager who's under great pressure. Uh, and the fans have begun to turn against him, which is never a good sign. Big Ange, the man who I think the question marks were where he'd managed before, because he's never managed really at a decent level, certainly not in my opinion. So it was always going to be a tough ask. Now, it doesn't mean that it's impossible. There are managers obviously who have managed in weak leagues and been really successful, but Ange is struggling big time. There are murmurings that he's a dead man walking. We have sort of mentioned this a couple of times, but it just is looking more and more. Oh, those voices are getting louder and louder. Spurs fans that we are aware of, that we know, are certainly not praising him anymore. They're criticizing him, which, as I said before, is not a good sign. So, is he going to last? I think because it looks as if Spurs are not going to start improving performances. Their performances are poor, results are poor, sliding down the table. Uh, They've spent money, but question marks over whether they've bought the right players. So, do you think he's going to last the season, Big Ange?
Good question. I'm gonna answer it as honestly as I can. I don't think so. I really don't think so. It's difficult to guess what Daniel Levy is going to do anyway. I mean, the fact is they're 15th. No Spurs fan would have envisaged them being 15th early on in the season. There was some talk about them being some outsiders for a push towards the Premier League title very early on. And I think the one thing that Spurs fans can argue, which I think is fair, is that they have had some troublesome injuries in certain key areas of the pitch. I mean, they've lost their goalkeeper, they've lost the two centre backs. You'll remember they kind of not rushed them back, but they both came back for that game against Liverpool. I'm tempted to say when they both went off injured. They've lost a doggy. So, I mean, that's going to debilitate any team, to be honest with you. They've had some indifferent performances from Sarr and Bissouma over the course of the season. Obviously, the one shining light in recent times has been the emergence of Bergville in the middle of a park. Fortunate against Liverpool. Definitely should have seen red. I don't think anybody really argues with that. And then it obviously cost Liverpool as Simicast was receiving treatment when Bergville then went up the other end and scored. Look, they've had, I think, 5 defeats and 1 draw in the last 6 Premier League games. That draw being at home to Wolves. They've lost to Arsenal in the last couple of games as well. A game I thought Arsenal played really well in, deserved to win. But of course, I mean, the last defeat against Everton, that one was pretty
Mm,
disappointing. Everton don't score against anyone, and yet here they were 3-0 up at half time. Yes, Spurs rallied to some extent. Poor Archie Gray with an own goal, I think, in that game as well. But
mm,
yeah, in the end, the challenge you've got is that when you're at a club that's got certain expectations, you can't be 15th. It just is what
mm,
it is. Man United, perhaps because they've just made a change, they're going to accept that they may well finish, I mean, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, where they are. Spurs have had some stability coming in. It's not Ange's first season. Yes, you can have a bit of a down year, but a down year should be maybe finishing 6th, 7th, maybe 8th. When you're kind of floundering in 15th, you are right, Ayub. The crowd is turning. There's no two ways about that. They are a decent team going forward, a good team going forward. I think they're an exciting team to watch just from a neutral's perspective. Jamie Carragher called them out on that as well and said, look, they're a fun team to watch. Um, but again, there's ways to do it. They're not mutually exclusive. We spoke about it with Liverpool. Again, another team probably near and dear to your heart, Bournemouth. Really fun team to watch, but
mm,
still churning out some great results, even though they've had some rough injuries in recent times as well. So it can be done. I don't understand this whole we're here to entertain as well. It can be done in a certain way. I think that just gives managers a bit of a cop out, as though we can just entertain and play freely. The great thing about sport and the meritocracy that it is at UB is that ultimately it's about, and I know you're big on this, which is ultimately performing under the most intense pressure. When Arsenal were in 2024, they'd won the most games, got the most points. I don't take any solace in that because ultimately that splits 2 seasons into two. The point is you've got to deal with the challenges of trying to win the biggest trophies, and there's pressures involved, and there's intensity, there's scrutiny, and the one question mark over Spurs has been, and this has been actually a number of years, hasn't it, Ayub? How do they stand up when the scrutiny is at its highest, when the pressure is at its highest, when the question marks are being asked, when you've got to go into a tough away ground, maybe 5 games to go, 4 games to go, you've got to win to stay in the Premier League title race. Are you winning those games? Though that's what matters. Spurs are playing football as though it's like an indoor game at the end of a week with just mates and thinking you go up the other and you score, we go up the other and we score. No, you got to play under certain pressures. Now, look, they had some great results at the start. I mean, they've beaten United at Old Trafford. They absolutely tonked City at the Etihad. They've had some brilliant results in amongst this, and yet they're still 15th. I mean, it's shocking in some ways that you can beat both Manchester clubs 7-0 and still be where you are. But yeah, I think he's under immense pressure. He started to get a bit antsy. I don't know if you've seen in the press
yeah.
conferences and in
Mm,
post-match interviews, getting a bit spiky. I never thought his love fest with the media was going to last anyway when he started at the beginning and he said, I don't like moaning about referees. I don't call out decisions. I thought, yep, give it time. We'll see how long that lasts. I think the other day, I mean, I thought the interview and the question was a little disrespectful in terms of, I think the reporter, I don't know if you caught the press conference when he said, was it a same old story or typical or something like this? And I think Ange took exception and the reporter to follow up by saying, well, as in you've lost again. So, as in, which I thought was a little bit disrespectful. And look, he's under pressure. He knows he's under pressure. again, there are some mitigating circumstances. I do believe that. You're not gonna lose your you're not gonna lose your first choice centre backs, are you, and do anything in this league. You're just not. So yeah, under pressure. Do I think he's going to last? I don't. I really don't. I think there might be some more tougher moments, and Daniel Levy will ultimately succumb to any fan pressure that arises. The
Mm.
worry for me would be, is it going to be a sense of deja vu? Because there may well be a League Cup final for them to contest against Newcastle or Arsenal if they overcome Liverpool in the second leg, which is coming up. And you'll remember Daniel Levy fired Mourinho days before
Mm.
the Carabao Cup, I think it was called, in final. I think they played against City, if memory serves, and City won. Yeah, I think with what's that midfielder called? It's not the one who had the head injury, but he took charge temporarily, if I remember
Oh
correctly.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, his name will come to me. But yeah, the point is, I'd be interested to see if that comes to pass. But yeah, I think Daniel Levy, I think he wants him to succeed. I think there's Ange is likable for the most part, but ultimately it's a results game. And I think if you're floundering in 15th, that's not acceptable. I think if you have a down year, you finish sixth, seventh, eighth, um, fair enough. But 15th is a bit much to swallow. I think he's in big trouble. Are you?
Yeah, it's not acceptable. Especially when you see what's happening around, in the sense that Forest, Brighton, Bournemouth, these are clubs that Tottenham would sort of say, well, we should be, we're bigger, and we should be better, we should be higher. So it just shows that if you get the coaching appointment right now, you can sort of say there's mitigating circumstances, injuries. That's part and parcel of football. You've got to just be able to cope with it. And the argument is, if you've just got one way of playing, he's quite a stubborn coach. He's got this philosophy, and he seldom wants to divert from that philosophy. Now, if you've got injuries, and you haven't got the strength to be able to play the way that you want, I would be expecting a coach to modify his style of play until the big guns come back. He's not doing that, so therefore I think he deserves all the criticism. And I think if he's going to be a stubborn old sod, then he has to uh, suffer the consequences. I am surprised he's still coach. I've got to be honest. I'm really surprised. I would have thought that Levy would have pulled the trigger. He's he, especially once the fans turn against the coach. As an owner, as a chairman, that when the fans turn against the coach, it's time to act. And he's had enough time, and I think he's not for changing. So really, if I would have, I was actually thinking, right, it's January. There's an opportunity for a new guy to come in, maybe pick up two or three players. Uh, but it's not happened. So I don't know when it's going to happen, because if you're not going to sack him in January, when you're going to do it?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I mean, you said it's not over till the fat lady sings, but she's definitely warming up her vocal cords. Ayub, she's definitely warming up her vocal cords. I mean, yeah, I look at Ange, honestly, still he comes across well. His teams are a good fun watch, and that's fine. I mean, as a neutral, I mean, it's fine, right? You're gonna get a good game when Spurs are involved. But again, if you're a fan, you're invested in getting consistently good performances and results. I think the front end of the pitch, there's not a huge deal wrong. There's a balance issue for sure. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But Kulusevski's having his best season. I think Solanke is a decent buy. Brennan Johnson, although he's, in my opinion, a relatively limited footballer, he's got on the end of some things and scored. I do think he's limited mind in terms of his general output as a player. But again, he's making some contributions. The middle of the park needs some work, but Bergvall's been a healthy surprise. I think they need somebody else next to him, maybe Bentancur. Obviously, he's got that concussion. I think he's still dealing with in terms of the fallout from that. And the back end, even with the first choice centre backs, Van der Ven and Romero, who are good. I mean, Romero, I've had issues in the past because of his selfish indulgences on the pitch and getting himself sent off. He's tended to calm down in recent times, but they still don't have a goalkeeper who's dominant. Their fullbacks are too attacking. I always think if you're going to have one that goes, you need one who's a bit more of a defensive back, I always think of Azpilicueta in the good old Chelsea defense. Is that kind of player. You need someone who's just going to be a bit more focused on defending. You've seen teams veer towards that anyway. You've been in recent times, this kind of third centre back, but they both of them bomb on. Spurs defense is often exposed 3-on-3, 4-on-4. I thought the biggest indictment for him was the Liverpool game. He played as though he was going up against another mid-table team. He didn't show the conviction or the desire or like you said, kind of stepping out of that stubbornness that you spoke of and say, look, we're going up against the best team in the league, the best team in Europe. Let me just have two banks here and see if they can break us
Mm.
down. And you've seen with Liverpool, with any team, it's not Liverpool specific. Any good team, you do have to pay them respect. You do have to just sit in, especially a team that thrives in open spaces. And yet Spurs took the opinion that no, we'll just play. We'll see how that
Mm.
goes. And you saw the outcome of that. Liverpool enjoyed a great day out and scored a plenty. Should have scored probably 10, maybe even 11 in that
Yeah.
game. So I thought that was the biggest indictment because that showed me a manager who's thinking, well, we do us. That's what we do. And I've never understood coaches like that. There's times when
Yeah.
in your development and in your evolution as a team where you've got to forge some good habits, which is the ability to suffer to achieve great results. I'm okay with suffering. If you remember, we spoke about Arsenal at the Etihad. I don't want to just keep harping about Arsenal, but there you see it with the great teams that when it's not your day, you say, right, today's a clean sheet type of day.
Yeah.
And if it's
Mm.
a point, it's a point. We take it, we move on. Today, we don't quite have it. The other team's on fire at the moment. We're going to dig in and we're going to get a clean sheet. And who knows, if we get a clean sheet, we've got a good chance our attackers can get us a goal. They don't show any of that metal
Mm.
that you need. And that's why they need a few more characters, in my opinion, in that squad. And it also needs, to your point, a manager who's going to really, really prioritize that side of the game. Now, do I think it's overblown that he doesn't think about defending? Of course, it is overblown. You can't be a coach in the Premier League and just ignore one side of the game. Do I think, however, he puts a premium on that side of the game? Absolutely not. His actions speak
Mm.
louder than words. You can watch a team and know if they've been drilled a certain way, worked on a certain way, working on it in training. That for me is the biggest indictment that he doesn't seem his team doesn't seem to show the inclination to dig in and get a result. So yeah, I do think he's going to pay. I think he's going to pay with his job if results don't turn. And again, he's still got injuries to overcome to try and get back on track. If he does, it'll be a great success story. If he makes it through to next season, I wonder. You've just on a bit of a. I don't. I guess harp on about it too much. Just want to get your thoughts. Um, if they did make a change, because I think he is the front runner right now in terms of probably the hottest of hot seats. Um, I guess Spurs would. I don't want to discuss it too much because it's not even a vacancy at the moment. But I guess Spurs would probably look at an Iriola and see if they could get their hands on a coach like that. Don't you think?
He's the he's the hottest ticket in town at the moment, Iriola. I think he's been an absolute revelation and one guy that obviously I'm a huge admirer of and what Bournemouth did as well. So really they need to I think Spurs need to make a change because you can use the fact that there are injuries, but I just don't think Ange's cut out. Uh, Certainly not to manage Spurs. I think he's there's a regression. I think he came and initially it was okay, but I don't think it's been anything apart from okay. His coaching, and that was always my concern. If you've managed in Scotland, it's just far too easy. If you're managing one of the big boys, if you're managing Celtic, it's too easy. I don't know how you can develop as a coach if you're managing in Scotland. Simple as that. And I think prior to that as well, he didn't have much of. He's not managed anywhere where I think right. He's got the credentials. I think when he's come here, he's not shown me anything. He's not shown flexibility. He's not been pragmatic. He has a way of playing, and that's it. And that to me is absolutely bonkers. That's insane. Yes, you should have a philosophy, and I think having an attacking philosophy is great. But you just talked about it as well, that sometimes you've got to be pragmatic and say, right, we're not going to out football this team. We need to be a little bit more cautious. He doesn't do that. That is a recipe for disaster, and it has been a recipe for disaster. So on that alone, He should be booted out.
Calm down, calm down. Just pivoting away, pivoting away. You've one man who's clearly got his finger on the pulse and who's got his team playing on the right tune and what have you, or getting a tune out of his players. Most points, top of the league, best goal difference. Ayub, I mean, he's gonna be manager of the year, I imagine. And let's see, how do you feel about Leeds at the moment? Ayub,
Uh,
you
I'm
forged
still
a 3 point
nervous.
gap, 3 point gap to Burnley.
Yeah, to Burnley, which is obviously that's you're always looking at the gap between the first and the third, or if you're in the top two between the third team. It's a huge game on Monday. I don't know whether you know who's playing who, but it's Burnley versus Leeds on Monday. So it's a massive, massive game. I'm nervous. I'm
Turf
nervous.
Moor, is that Turf Moor?
At Turf Moor, yeah. I mean, they could do the double over us. I mean, they beat us at Ellen Road 1-0. It was a game actually we were dominant, but we were impotent up top. They scored a goal, and they're one of the meanest defenses in the championship.
They're probably one of the
Uh,
most. They're probably one of the more meaner defenses in the top five leagues. I would
well, yeah,
imagine. I mean,
yeah,
9 goals conceded.
yeah. So that it's a tough. It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a monumental game, and l- I have I'm petrified because I think Fark is. I mean, I talk about Fark, uh,
He's top
but
of the league,
I'm
man. He's top of the
but
league.
again, we're top of the league because we have the best squad of
Oh,
players. Now,
here you
if you
go.
have the best team,
Here you
it's
go.
like I've told you many times. You put two five-a-side sides together, guys that have never played together, but you put one good team or one team full of good players against a team perhaps with mediocre players. The good team will win because they've got good players, not because they've got the best system.
Why have a
Good
manager
players.
anyway then? Why have a manager anyway?
Well, you need a manager, a good manager, because ultimately, uh, in the Premier League, we just talked about two managers who are struggling. And is struggling. Why? Because he's not a great tactician. Uh, in the Championship, it's a little bit different because if you have really, really good players in a league which is rather mediocre, the good players will just take care of business on the whole, which they do. Occasionally, uh, they won't. But the problem with Fark is he's a manager who who restrains players, and that's
They're
the
straight,
problem.
they, they, they've got the best goal difference.
Yeah,
I think they've
because
scored the second most goals as well, I think.
yeah, we've got good players, and good players will play well. Good players will score goals
Okay.
against some of the opposition. Now, this is going to be the test. This is the litmus test against Burnley. Burnley, the meanest defense. They've got the best keeper in the league by a country mile. In fact, James Trafford.
You take a point, are you? Come on.
I would take a point, yes, and that's disappointing. I don't want to say that because that to me is a reflection on Fark. Any other
Well,
manager, any other manager, I would have said, right, what?
I'm sorry.
What?
Let me just clarify this. I'm sorry. I'll let you finish your point. But man, it's not even been 3 minutes since you said sometimes as a manager you've got to sometimes just dig in and it's not your day and you just take a point and now you're like turf more. No, no, no. I'll be disappointed. We've got to go there for the win. No, you take the point. Be pragmatic, man.
I'll take the point. The reason why is because we've got a very poor coach. Now, I am absolutely convinced that he is going to set us up. Uh, any other coach, a good coach, you put Iriola in terms of managing this side, I'd be sort of saying, right, I reckon we'll win maybe 3-1, 3-0. Because
Okay, okay. So a team, let me get this right. So a team that's conceded nine all season, and you think you're just gonna rock up and score three. That's what you're saying. That's how we should set up. Thinking Burnley have got the meanest defense in probably the top five leagues, probably all the leagues in Europe at this stage, and you're saying we should be rocking up there and putting three past them. That's your approach.
yes, because the reason why is we've got Joel Pirro, 16 million striker. We've got Mana Solomon, who admittedly he's on loan, but he's a 25 million winger. We've got Dan James, we bought for 25 million. We've got Ramazani, who we bought quite cheap, but his valuation should be about 10 million. We've got Nonto, who is valued over 20 million. We've got Ampadu. We've got Rothwell, who's a Premier League player, albeit he's obviously on loan again. So the caliber of players that we have for the championship. I mean, this is cheat mode, really. So you give those players, you give a manager those players in the championship. it doesn't matter who we're playing. We really should be head and shoulders above anybody
Well,
else. We
well,
should be at the moment. We should be 10 points
behave,
ahead of second.
behave. Sheffield United are a very good team, and Burnley are a very good team. And right now, Sunderland are pushing. I mean, you're clearly going to finish top four. I think you'll get promoted. Of course, you as a fan will always think the worst. I mean, I'm just interested. I asked you this last time, and be honest. Don't just say this for the sake of saying it. But if and when you do go up, you're saying that you would just fire Daniel Farke on the spot. I find that remarkable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the Iriola thing was, I mean, I keep on going back to that, but that to me, Bournemouth, that was the most magnificent decision uh, I've come across in terms of management decisions. That was brilliant. I mean, we obviously we did a show on that, and you were very critical of what Bournemouth did, but that to me is really what vision is. No, no,
I was
yeah, come on, you've got to eat humble pie.
I was critical of the way Gary O'Neill was treated because it may surprise you, but I am a human being first, and those are certain. I mean, you expect to be dealt with a certain integrity and dignity. And Gary O'Neill, I told you about. Anyway, we won't dive too
He
much
got
into.
a tidy payout. Don't feel
Yeah,
bad
I'm
for
sure. No,
Gary O'Neill.
yeah,
And and
I don't think he was. Yeah, I don't think he was struggling there afterwards. Don't
and
worry about
he's
that.
he's showing his worth at Wolves.
Oh, good. Touche, touche. I mean, look, I think it's a big game. You're absolutely right. I think all joking aside, you'll take a point, wouldn't you?
I will do. I will do.
You may give up top spot, but I think it's a point well worth. I mean, Burnley are pushing, aren't you? I think if Burnley win, that's probably going to be most upsetting because then it's a three-way kind of clogged at the top, let's say. But I think Sunderland's still a bit adrift. I do think the top three teams are the class of the league for the time being. But yeah, three three teams in two spots, so we'll see how it all pans out.
It's very, very tight. It's very, very tense. And the championship it's the best show in world football, I think, in terms of
Behave,
drama.
behave. Okay, okay, fine. You can stay in the league next year then as well. Okay, cool.
All right. On that ridiculous note, I think we will call it a day. Obviously, the wind's got to me.
Yes, clearly.
Right. As always, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you're in the Northwest or if you're in England, which most of you are, stay safe. It's still a little bit wild. I think the wind has calmed down, so maybe things are okay. But until the next time, stay safe. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon. Ta-ra.